Welcome back to the First Case Expert Series, where we're talking to Jeff Wertz, our perioperative instrument coordination expert. I'm your host, Melanie Perry. And Jeff, today's the last episode of our conversation. And really, when we think about putting it all together, why don't we kind of start with how do we take all of the information you've given us, all of your expertise that you've shared, and how do we make this applicable for the situations we find ourselves in?
Yeah, I think what we've done this season is really do a good job of go really in depth and granular at each step of the process. But I think, to your point of let's tie this together and kind of go through a real world example of it. Going back to the beginning of the series when we were discussing this of identifying where there's opportunities for your facility. Because every single facility is different, you all report to different leadership. You have different decision makers in the process, and depending on the audience here, what your role is, you have different masters that you have to serve in this process. So I think going back all the way to the beginning is looking at what's most important, how are we evaluating our department, and doing some sort of kind of SWOT analysis. Now, I'm familiar with SWOT analysis. Melanie, do you guys use that? Is that a common framework that you've utilized in healthcare?
In leadership, for sure, we hear that terminology and we will use that framework, that strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to look at different programs, different opportunities to improve, or different programs we might want to begin. That we might look at our strengths and our weaknesses, the opportunities, and then obviously the threats to whatever it is we're trying to do. So yes, when we're talking to our healthcare professionals, to our leadership, we are very familiar with SWOT analysis because we do take advantage of that acronym when we're looking at different opportunities.
Perfect. So then I think in this space that we're talking about is between Periop and SPD, there's a lot of different opportunities. So I think by way of example, looking at the vendor challenges, because that's oftentimes a big concern or an issue that the OR has issues with as well as SPD. And I think if you do some of that, if you did a SWOT analysis at many places and you're evaluating, listing out all the different strengths and weaknesses, that probably comes up as as a weakness where there can be improvement upon that. And a significant threat. I think there's a lot of crossover between all of these, as you create a SWOT analysis and evaluate what you've put in there as listing those out, that there's a lot of crossover in the opportunities or the threats and the weaknesses also being opportunities for your departments. So from a vendor perspective, obviously there's weaknesses on, just the throughput that you're able to accomplish it, or ability to support all the procedures. It can be a weakness in the department. Also creating threats for you of having to speed up your SPD or having to frantically search for things within your OR to support a procedure. So that would be one that I think is common from a vendor perspective. Would you agree with that? Disagree that makes some sense?
It makes a whole lot of sense. And when we think about the pain points from the OR, when we are interacting with our vendors and looking at our schedule and trying to make sure that we get everything on time, that we get our trays on time, and what are the weaknesses or what are the threats to on-time case starts? What are the things that are preventing us from doing our job efficiently? But you can also look at some of those maybe weaknesses when we're talking. Let's continue in the example of vendor management. Yes, maybe we do have some weaknesses in how we've been managing our vendors in the past. Maybe we have some threats to our on-time starts or to our turnover times. But there's opportunity there too to improve. And we can look at those weaknesses and threats and how can we spin that into an opportunity, right?
Yep, exactly where I'm going with it too is there's a lot of crossover there. So let's take that as an opportunity to make a change in it. So evaluating where you currently stand and evaluate with leadership between both SPD and the OR and discuss, all right, this is a challenge. We both agree this is a challenge, because at the end of the day, there's going to be some sort of division of labor to evaluate this and evaluate a plan of attack to address it. So starting off at a baseline of just evaluating, what technology do you currently have? How can it be leveraged? Can it be leveraged today to better manage your vendors? There's solutions out there. Obviously, I would speak to Surgio from that perspective. But I think that there's, anything that you have in place that can begin counting the number of loaner sets that are coming in. If you can go a level deeper into also evaluating consignment sets is huge. Then one step below that is it on time or not? Are they delivering it on time? What's the quantities of those? How does that break out throughout a weekly basis based on the number of procedures that are coming in? And what does that cost your department? Because now what we're doing is establishing a business case and saying this is the actual cost to it. So going to some of the more recent conversations that we've had around how do we present this to the decision makers to bring in a solution or provide more resources to address it. Now we have some hard evidence that we can go in and say, here's the impact to our department, here's the impact that it has to SPD, the impact that's having on our ORs, and here's how we can address it moving forward and get a return on that investment of whether that be a technology and or another person that's in place and what they're going to be responsible for and what our expectations are for it. And so as we set up that business case, now you can also go out and evaluate what your solution to that is. Is it a technology that you bring in? How does that incorporate into the rest of your technology? Going back to the IT discussion that you potentially or would need to have if you're bringing in technology, you can start proactively looking at what's the integrations that we are going to need or require for it. Can we get started with nothing? How does that going to interact with moving forward with future state plans of where IT is moving our system? So there's a lot of different considerations to take into account, but getting that baseline set of some basic data points that you can actually rely on and say, here's what's costing us today. Here's what an impact would be moving forward of how we see us reducing that cost and looking at what the investment takes to get to that point. You're well on the way to building a business case to have all the rest of the conversations that you're going to need to have with leadership. What am I missing there from just kind of going off the top of my head on some of those pieces, Mel?
Actually, you're not missing anything, but I'm seeing a thread that's being woven between that SWOT analysis and our business case and getting those data points. Because if we start from looking at the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, threats, looking at all of that, and then we can fill in those data points that we need, we can fill in the information, then suddenly I have created my business case. And I don't know about you, but I think that it would be very helpful to take my full analysis to the person I'm building the business case to and be like, look, I know this is a strength, this is a weakness, here's a threat, but here's an opportunity. And being able to lay it all out, not only by what we've analyzed by doing our SWOT analysis, but also then we have the data to back it up. And suddenly you have two pieces of the puzzle coming together to help with your business case. Don't you agree?
That's exactly right. And as we were going through this too, I think what I would also equate it to, and where others might be more familiar with it within healthcare, would be like an SBAR, which is looking at the situation, background assessment, and recommendation. So same concept. Sorry, it's a little bit out of place here to throw it in, but I think that's really applicable and leveraged a lot in healthcare as well. But going in with that framework shows that you've done some of the baseline work and how you plan to move forward with it. So as you have those conversations, it becomes a lot more meaningful. And then lastly, I think, what's the follow through look like and how are we going to measure it moving forward is another, just a very interesting point that I think is oftentimes in healthcare kind of put by the wayside of the follow-up discussions on it and how there's going to be continued review moving forward. I think that, just coming from the technology side, I know that's a question that we get asked a lot when we're doing RFPs, things like that, of, what are we able to look at to continue verifying or validating the purchase of the software? And there has to be a little bit of give and take. There has to be, support or leadership oversight to monitor those KPIs and things that you're putting in place to improve your process moving forward. So looking back at that vendor impact or the vendor management program that you're going into, what are some of those KPIs that you want to leverage moving forward that leadership can then point to also and say, hey, this is what we've done. This is how we've improved over time. And I think those are the things that from a holistic perspective make a big impact on, your hospital. But even more so, I mean, everyone's, at a certain level, everyone is going to be selfish, and you should be to some extent, want to improve your own career and continue to advance. But being able to have those types of metrics to be able to put on your resume of supporting and optimizing a program and continuing to do that with great success is a huge leg up that you can have on a lot of people in healthcare, because I've seen a lot of instances where people put something in place or they've implemented it, but then they stop and then walk away, and there's no support beyond that. And they can say that they've implemented things that potentially could drive some savings, but how do we, really continue to illustrate that and leverage it? And those people that are really bought in and drive that are really the game changers in healthcare.
100% agree. And I think this goes back to an earlier conversation we had too about the follow up, about the follow through. You can implement a change all you want to, but if you don't actually follow it up and check and have those KPIs built into, hey, is what we've implemented working? Is the change we've made effective? Are we either saving money or more efficient or more product, or is there better productivity? Whatever it is that we're trying to improve, you can't just change something and then not follow up and make sure that the
Right.
change actually worked, right?
Yep. And then even on top of that, I'd say it continues to compound and improve for
Hmm.
your own ability
Right.
to make
Yeah,
change within your organization. So
absolutely.
once you build up some of that capital within your organization, or kind of political capital within your
Yeah, political
organization,
trust too.
right, right, that
Yeah.
you can follow through with something, you can really make a lot more difference in a lot of different areas. And that's, a really good pathway to be on is getting to be a part of some of those discussions. And I think it's something that is, just huge opportunity in this space in particular, because I think if any facility goes through that list, go through a SBAR or your SWOT analysis, maybe the SWOT analysis is probably the first good place to start, because you can just brain dump all of the different things and then probably go a level deeper within an S bar on each one that you want to focus on. But I think you'd see a lot of crossover between these, um, between the different things. I mean, a lot of the discussions that we've had throughout this year already of looking at, the strengths and weaknesses of your pref cards and the impact that it can have on your department, or the error reporting, things like that really do impact it, or the costs that you're spending, the expense that you have on instrument repair and maintenance, and how that's being managed. These are things that are currently happening, but oftentimes not really being evaluated. And anyone that kind of takes that and runs with it, I think has a tremendous opportunity for career advancement and improving the department as a whole.
Yeah. Making changes and being the change maker. So it's
Right.
in hospital benefit or facility benefit and personal benefit for sure. So Jeff, this has been a phenomenal year of learning from you, picking your brain, hearing your expertise and having you share it with us. So if anybody watching wants to be able to get in touch with you or wants to find you, where can they learn more about you, or where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's been an awesome year, of conversations with you as well. You can reach me at jwertz, JWERTZ at Surgio.com. I'm on LinkedIn. Please, connect with me there and ask any questions. And you can learn more about our platform at Surgio.com. But it's an entire departmental solution, really, with the goal of driving efficiencies between OR and SPD, which is what I love talking about with you and really focusing on. So appreciate any requests for more
Yeah.
information.
Absolutely. Well, that is all the time that we have for today. And that ties a bow very nicely on this series. Jeff, thank you so much for sharing your time with us and with our audience.
Thank you.
That is all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much for following along with us as we have learned from Jeff and as he has shared his experience with us in this video expert series. But stay tuned. We have more in store for you and more planned and more education coming your way. Thanks for watching this episode of the First Case Expert Series.